Eleanor Brooks thought she'd moved on from the man who broke her heart 5 years ago, until she walked into his wedding as a hired consultant and overheard him call her "that black maid I used to date." The insult went viral within hours, shattering both their lives in front of millions. But when his company desperately hired her to save face, Elena had a choice: walk away with her dignity, or stay and watch him crumble under the weight of his own shame. What he didn't know was that she'd become everything he'd thrown away, and now he couldn't stop looking at her like she was the future he'd destroyed. But could a man who chose his father's approval over love ever truly change? Or was Elena about to make the same mistake twice? Subscribe right now and comment where you're watching from, because this story is about to prove that sometimes the best revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. The morning sun poured golden light across the Caldwell estate gardens. White roses lined every path. Silk ribbons danced in the warm Charleston breeze. Elena Brooks stood at the edge of the property, clipboard in hand, checking the last details of the outdoor setup. She hadn't wanted to take this job. When her boss called yesterday morning about an emergency consultation, Eleanor almost said no. A last-minute wedding fix wasn't her usual work anymore. She'd built her consulting business on careful planning, not crisis management, but the money was good, really good, and her Aunt June needed help with medical bills. So here she was. Eleanor adjusted the collar of her cream-colored dress. Professional, elegant. She'd learned years ago that presentation mattered in this world. When you walked into rooms full of wealth, you needed to look like you belonged there, not because you wanted their approval, but because you refused to be dismissed. "Excuse me, are you the coordinator?" A woman in a pale blue dress approached, her tone sharp with stress. "Image consultant," Elena corrected gently. "I'm here to assess the decor flow. You must be Lydia's mother." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Yes, thank goodness you're here. The florist completely misunderstood our vision for the archway, and the seating arrangements—" She waved her hand in frustration. "Well, you'll see." Eleanor nodded. She'd been doing this work for 3 years now, ever since she'd left her housekeeping jobs behind and taken that first business course at the community college. Aunt June had been so proud. "Baby girl, you're going to show this city what you're made of," she'd said. And Eleanor had, slowly, carefully, building a reputation one consultation at a time. She walked through the garden, making notes. The setup was beautiful, but disorganized. The archway needed repositioning. The guest tables were too close together, small fixes that would make a big difference. "The ceremony starts in an hour," Lydia's mother reminded her, anxiety creeping into her voice. "That's plenty of time," Eleanor assured her. "Let me talk to your event staff." As she moved toward the main tent, a group of men in expensive suits stood near the bar, laughing. Their voices carried across the lawn. She caught fragments of their conversation: stock prices, vacation homes, someone's new boat. One voice stood out, deep, confident, slightly arrogant. Elena's hand froze on her clipboard. She knew that voice. No, it couldn't be. She turned slowly, her heart suddenly pounding. Through the small crowd of groomsmen, she saw him, tall, dark hair perfectly styled, that same easy smile that used to make her stomach flip. Ethan Caldwell, the groom. Of course, the Caldwell estate. She should have made the connection. But the job came through her boss, and she'd been so focused on Aunt June's bills that she hadn't looked at the client details carefully. Elena's chest tightened. 5 years. It had been 5 years since she'd seen him, since he'd ended things with a phone call that lasted less than 3 minutes. "This isn't working," he'd said, his voice hollow. "We're from different worlds." She'd cried for weeks. Then she'd gotten angry. Then she'd gotten better. And now here he was, about to marry someone else. Eleanor took a slow breath. She was a professional. She could handle this. She would do her job, collect her fee, and leave. Ethan didn't even need to know she was here. She turned back toward the tent, keeping her head high. Ethan Caldwell adjusted his bow tie for the 3rd time. His hands felt shaky. Strange. He'd closed million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but standing here in his wedding clothes, he felt like he might throw up. "Relax, man." Mark Rivers, his best man and business partner, clapped him on the shoulder. "You look like you're facing a firing squad." "I'm fine," Ethan said automatically. He wasn't fine, but he couldn't explain why. Lydia was perfect, beautiful, from the right family. She understood his world, the social expectations, the business dinners, the importance of maintaining the right image. His mother approved, his father approved, everyone approved. So why did his chest feel so tight? You sure about this? Mark asked quietly. Ethan shot him a look. It's my wedding day. Bit late for second thoughts. Mark raised his hands in surrender. Just checking. You've seemed off lately. I'm getting married. I'm allowed to be nervous. Nervous is normal. You look like you're convincing yourself. Ethan turned away, irritation flashing through him. Mark always did this. Pushed too hard, asked too many questions. They'd been friends since college, and sometimes Ethan valued his honesty. Today wasn't one of those times. I need a drink, Ethan muttered. He grabbed a glass of champagne from the bar and downed half of it in one gulp. The alcohol warmed his throat. Better. He could do this. He'd made his choice. Lydia was the right choice. The other choice, the one he'd made 5 years ago, had been necessary. Painful, but necessary. His father had made that clear. Son, you're a Caldwell. You can't throw your future away on some girl who cleans houses. What will people think? What will that do to the business? Ethan had tried to argue, but his father's disappointment had been crushing. And when he'd really thought about it, about introducing Elena to his parents' friends, about the whispers, about how different their worlds were, he'd realized maybe his father was right. So he'd ended it. Quick and clean. It had hurt like hell, but he'd moved on. At least that's what he told himself. Hey! Another groomsman, Jason, joined them at the bar. You remember that girl you dated back then? The housekeeper? Ethan's jaw tightened. What about her? Jason laughed, already tipsy. I was just thinking about how different your life would be if you'd stayed with her. Thank God you came to your senses. Mark shifted uncomfortably beside them. Yeah, Ethan said, taking another drink. The champagne was making him feel loose, reckless. That would have been a disaster. Could you imagine? Jason continued, oblivious to Mark's warning look. Bringing her to events? Your dad would have lost it. Something dark unfurled in Ethan's chest. Guilt, maybe, or shame. He didn't want to feel either, so he pushed it down with another gulp of champagne. I'm glad I left that behind, Ethan heard himself say. The words came out harder than he intended. That black maid or whatever dodged a bullet there. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Mark's face went pale. Jason laughed, but it sounded forced, and then Ethan noticed the silence spreading around them. Several nearby guests had turned to stare. A woman in a pink dress covered her mouth, eyes wide. An older couple frowned with disapproval. Ethan, Mark said quietly, that was... Ladies and gentlemen, the wedding coordinator's voice cut through the awkward moment, amplified by the sound system. We have a slight delay. Our image consultant has arrived to make some last-minute adjustments to ensure everything is perfect. Please remain patient. The ceremony will begin shortly. Ethan barely heard her. His brain was stuck on what he'd just said, the ugly words, the casual cruelty. He'd been trying to sound confident. Instead, he sounded like his father. I'm going to check on Lydia, he mumbled, setting down his glass. As he walked toward the bridal tent, he tried to shake off the discomfort settling in his stomach. It was just nerves, pre-wedding jitters. That's all. Everything was fine. Elena worked quickly, directing the event staff to adjust the archway and respace the tables. Her hands moved on autopilot while her mind spun. Ethan was getting married. Of course he was. 5 years was a long time. She'd dated other people too. It hadn't worked out, but she'd tried. She told herself it didn't matter. That chapter of her life was closed. But standing here in his family's garden, surrounded by his world, it brought everything back. The way he'd made her laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she was the most important person in the room, the way he'd promised they could make it work, no matter what anyone said, and then the way he'd thrown it all away. Miss Brooks? One of the event staff approached. The archway is repositioned. Do you want to check it? Yes, thank you. Eleanor followed her to the ceremony space. The archway looked better now, more balanced. The white roses cascaded beautifully, and the silk ribbons caught the light just right. Perfect, Eleanor said. That's exactly what we needed. You have a good eye, the staff member said admiringly. Lydia's lucky you could come on such short notice. Eleanor smiled politely. Lucky. Right. She glanced at her watch. The ceremony would start in 20 minutes. She should finish her assessment and leave before... Eleanor! The voice came from behind her. She'd recognize it anywhere. She turned slowly, gathering every ounce of composure she possessed. Ethan stood 10 feet away, still holding a champagne glass. He looked older, more polished. His suit probably cost more than her car, but his eyes, those familiar brown eyes, looked shocked. Hi, Ethan, she said calmly. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. What are you doing here? I'm the image consultant. Your fiancé's mother hired me to fix the decor issues. She kept her voice professional, distant. I didn't know. He ran a hand through his hair. I had no idea you were... It's fine. I'm almost done. Elena turned back toward her clipboard, dismissing him. Elena, wait. She paused, but didn't turn around. Is there something you need, Mr. Caldwell? Because I have work to finish. The formality in her voice seemed to hit him like a slap. She could hear him take a step closer. You look incredible, he said softly. Now she did turn, fixing him with a steady gaze. Thank you. I've done well for myself since we last spoke. I heard you started your own business. That's amazing. It is, she agreed. Now if you'll excuse me. I'm sorry, he blurted out, for how things ended. You should have done a lot of things, Elena interrupted, her voice still calm, but with an edge. But that was 5 years ago. We've both moved on. She watched him process her words, saw the guilt flash across his face. Yeah, he said finally. We have. A woman's voice called from the bridal tent. Ethan, where are you? We need pictures. Lydia, his fiancée, the woman he'd chosen instead. Congratulations on your wedding, Eleanor said, her tone perfectly polite. I hope you'll be very happy together. She walked past him before he could respond, her heels clicking against the stone pathway. She could feel his eyes on her back, but she didn't look back. Not this time. She'd learned her lesson about looking back. The ceremony began 15 minutes later. Eleanor stayed at the far edge of the garden, hidden behind a cluster of magnolia trees. She told herself she was just making sure everything looked right, that she was being thorough. But really, she couldn't help watching. Ethan stood at the altar, impossibly handsome in his suit. Lydia walked down the aisle in a stunning white gown, her smile bright and practiced. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together. Eleanor's chest ached. She'd imagined this once. Not the fancy wedding, she'd never cared about that, but the promise, the commitment, the idea that someone would choose her and keep choosing her, no matter what the world said. Ethan had chosen differently. As the officiant asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Eleanor turned away. She'd seen enough. She made her way back toward the main tent where the reception would be held, intending to collect her things and leave. Her job was done. She'd repositioned the archway, fixed the table spacing, and made sure the decor flow worked. She'd earned her fee. Time to go. But as she reached the tent, she heard voices. Loud voices. Angry voices. Can't believe you said that! A woman's voice, sharp with fury. I was just joking around. I was nervous. Ethan's voice, defensive. You called her a black maid at our wedding. Eleanor froze, her stomach dropped. I didn't mean, Ethan started. It's already online, Ethan. Someone filmed you and posted it with captions. Groom makes racist comment at his own wedding. Do you know what this looks like? Elena's hands went numb. She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers and searched Ethan's name. There it was. A video clip from earlier. Ethan at the bar, champagne in hand, saying those words. The angle made it look even worse than it probably was in person, and the comments below, hundreds of them, were vicious, disgusting, racist trash. Feel sorry for whatever poor woman he was talking about. Eleanor's breathing came short and fast. This couldn't be happening. She'd come here to do a job, to move forward with her life, and now she was part of some viral scandal. Elena? She looked up to find Mark standing nearby, his expression pained. I'm so sorry, he said. He was drunk and stupid. He didn't mean what? Eleanor's voice came out sharper than she intended. Didn't mean to insult me, or didn't mean to get caught? Mark winced. Both, probably, but for what it's worth, I think he's been miserable for years. He never got over you. Well, he hid it well, Elena said bitterly. She shoved her phone back in her purse. I need to leave. Wait. Mark caught her arm gently. Don't let him chase you away. You did nothing wrong. Hold your head high. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. She remembered Mark from years ago. He'd always been kind to her, even when others in Ethan's circle hadn't been. Thank you, she said quietly. She walked back through the garden, past the ceremony space where guests were now taking photos, past the cocktail area where champagne still flowed, past everything that represented Ethan's world. As she reached the parking area, she heard footsteps running behind her. Eleanor, please! She turned to find Ethan jogging toward her, his face flushed. Lydia stood in the distance, watching with her arms crossed. Don't go, Ethan said, slightly out of breath. Let me explain. Explain what? Eleanor's voice was quiet, but firm. "Explain why you said those things. Explain why you're still the same person who was ashamed of me 5 years ago." "I'm not ashamed." "Yes, you are." Elena stepped closer, her eyes meeting his directly. "You were ashamed then, and you're ashamed now. But here's the difference, Ethan. I'm not ashamed anymore. I'm not that scared girl who thought your approval mattered. I built something real, something I'm proud of." "I know," he whispered, "and I'm so sorry." "Your apology is 5 years too late," Elena said, "and frankly, I don't need it." She turned away, her heart pounding. Behind her, she heard Lydia's voice calling Ethan back to the reception. Heard the murmur of guests returning to their celebration. Elena got in her car, started the engine, and drove away from the Caldwell estate. She didn't cry. Not yet. She'd save that for later, alone in her apartment where no one could see, where no one could judge. The reception dinner was a disaster. Ethan could feel the tension in every conversation. Guests whispered behind their hands. His mother's smile looked frozen in place. His father kept checking his phone, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. Lydia sat beside him, barely touching her food. Her mother hovered nearby, damage control written all over her face. "We need to make a statement," Lydia said quietly. "Something that explains what happened." "What happened is I was an idiot," Ethan muttered. "That's not helpful." Lydia's voice was cold. "Do you know how many people have already called my mother? How many messages I've gotten from friends asking if I know about your ex-girlfriend, the maid?" Ethan set down his fork. "She wasn't a maid. She was a housekeeper. And then she became so much more than that." "Oh, now you defend her." Lydia's eyes flashed. "After what you said at the bar?" "I know. I screwed up." "You humiliated me. You humiliated your family, and you humiliated her." Lydia's voice cracked slightly. "On our wedding day, Ethan." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Several guests turned to look. Lydia's mother rushed over, placing a calming hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I need a moment," Lydia said, her voice tight. She walked toward the house, her mother following. Ethan sat alone at the head table, acutely aware of every eye on him. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. "My office. Now." Ethan excused himself and walked through the garden to his father's study in the main house. Mr. Caldwell sat behind his desk, his face stern. "Sit down," he commanded. Ethan sat. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" His father's voice was dangerously quiet. "Our family name is trending online for all the wrong reasons. I've had 3 business partners call me today asking about this scandal." I apologized. "To whom? To Lydia, to your guests, or to the woman you insulted?" His father leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've managed to destroy your wedding day and potentially damage business relationships that took decades to build." "I'll fix it," Ethan said weakly. "How? By giving some half-hearted interview? By pretending you're not the spoiled child who thinks he can say whatever he wants because of our family name?" The words stung because they were partly true. Ethan had grown up with privilege. He'd taken it for granted, and now it was biting him hard. "Elena didn't deserve that," Ethan said quietly. "I was wrong." His father's expression didn't soften. "You were wrong to date her in the first place. I told you then it wouldn't work. People like her and people like us, we don't mix." "People like her." Ethan felt anger rising in his chest. "You mean people who work hard? People who build something from nothing? People with actual integrity?" "I mean people from different social classes," his father said coldly. "Don't make this about race. It's about culture, background, compatibility." "It's always about race," Ethan shot back. "You just don't want to admit it." His father stood. "Watch your tone with me. You're already in enough trouble." Ethan stood too, his fists clenched. "You know what? Maybe I'm in trouble because I listened to you 5 years ago. Maybe I'm in trouble because I was too much of a coward to fight for someone who actually mattered. Lydia matters. Does she?" Ethan's voice rose. "Or does her family name matter? Her connections? Her ability to look good at charity galas?" His father's face turned red. "Get out. Go salvage what's left of your marriage before Lydia's family decides you're not worth the embarrassment." Ethan left the study, his heart racing. He walked back through the garden, past the reception where guests were pretending everything was fine, past the bar where he'd said those terrible words. He found Mark by the fountain, drink in hand. "Bad?" Mark asked. "Worse," Ethan admitted. "Lydia's inside crying. Her mother is talking about postponing the honeymoon." Ethan sat on the edge of the fountain, suddenly exhausted. "I ruined everything." "Yeah, you did." Mark sat beside him. "But maybe you ruined the wrong thing 5 years ago and today was just the consequence catching up." Ethan looked at his best friend. What do you mean? I mean you've been pretending for years, pretending you got over Elena, pretending Lydia makes you happy, pretending you're the man your father wants you to be. Mark took a drink. Maybe today just pulled the mask off. That's harsh. That's honest. Mark met his eyes. How you want to know what I think? I think you never stopped loving Elena, and I think you just realized it at the worst possible time. Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't, because Mark was right. The night dragged on. The reception ended early. Guests left with awkward goodbyes. Lydia refused to speak to him. His mother looked devastated. His father looked furious. And Ethan stood in the empty garden, alone, knowing he'd destroyed not one but two relationships in a single day. His phone buzzed. Another notification. Another comment on the viral video. He opened it and read, "That maid he mentioned is Elena Brooks, owner of Brooks Image Consulting. She was at the wedding today as a hired consultant. Talk about awkward. Someone had identified her, tagged her business page. The comments below were mixed. Some supportive of her, some cruel, some speculating about their past relationship. Ethan's stomach twisted. He'd wanted to protect his image. Instead, he'd exposed Elena to public scrutiny all over again. He thought about texting her, calling her, apologizing properly. But what would he even say? I'm sorry I was a coward 5 years ago. I'm sorry I said terrible things today. I'm sorry I never stopped thinking about you. None of it would be enough. Nothing would be enough. Ethan walked back to the house, his wedding day ending not with joy, but with the bitter taste of regret. And somewhere across the city, Elena Brooks sat in her small apartment, holding her Aunt June's hand, trying not to cry, trying to believe that tomorrow would be better, trying to forget the look on Ethan's face when he'd seen her in the garden. Because forgetting was easier than hoping, and hoping had already hurt her enough. Eleanor woke up the next morning to 73 missed calls. Her phone had been buzzing all night. She'd turned off the sound around midnight, too exhausted to deal with any more notifications. But now, in the grey morning light, she forced herself to look. Messages from old friends, emails from potential clients, voicemails from reporters asking for interviews. Her business social media accounts had hundreds of new followers, and just as many hateful comments. Gold digger, attention seeker. She probably planned this whole thing. Eleanor set down her phone, her hands trembling. This was a nightmare. A public nightmare she couldn't escape. "Baby girl!" Aunt June's voice came from the doorway. Her aunt stood there in her worn bathrobe, concern etched across her face. "You okay?" "No," Elena whispered. "I'm really not." Aunt June crossed the room and pulled Elena into a hug. She smelled like lavender soap and coffee. Safe, familiar. "That boy's got the whole internet talking," Aunt June said, rubbing Elena's back. "But you didn't do anything wrong. You hear me? Not a single thing." "It doesn't matter," Elena said, her voice muffled against her aunt's shoulder. "Everyone thinks I'm part of some scandal. My business, your business is built on your talent and your reputation. One viral video doesn't change that." Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes. 3 clients already cancelled this morning. I saw the emails." Aunt June's expression hardened. "Then they weren't worth your time anyway. People who judge you based on some rich boy's mistakes, you don't need them." Elena wanted to believe that, but rent was due in 2 weeks, and Aunt June's medical bills kept growing. She couldn't afford to lose clients, no matter how principled it felt to say otherwise. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena Brooks speaking. "Miss Brooks, this is Patricia Chen from Caldwell Realty." The woman's voice was crisp and professional. "I'm calling regarding a consulting opportunity." Eleanor's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, I think there's been a mistake." "No mistake. We're renovating several properties for a community development project and need an image consultant to help with staging and presentation. The contract would be for 4 weeks starting Monday. The pay is quite competitive." Elena's mind spun. Caldwell Realty. Ethan's company. This had to be some kind of setup. "I appreciate the offer," Elena said carefully. "But given recent events, I'm not sure that's appropriate." "Recent events are precisely why we're calling," Patricia said. "Mr. Caldwell Sr. has requested damage control. Having you work with us shows we value diversity and professionalism. It's good optics." There it was. The real reason. Not because they wanted her talent, because they wanted to use her as a symbol. Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Thank you for your time, but I'll have to decline." "The pay is $15,000 for 4 weeks, Patricia said quickly, "plus expenses." Eleanor's breath caught. 15,000. That was more than she usually made in 3 months. That would cover Aunt June's bills and buy them breathing room. I'll need to think about it, Elena said. Of course, I'll email you the contract details. We'd need an answer by end of business today. The call ended. Elena stared at her phone. What was that about? Aunt June asked. They want to hire me. Ethan's company. Aunt June's eyebrows rose. And how do you feel about that? Like it's a trap, Eleanor admitted, but it's also $15,000. Her aunt was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? I think you should take it. Not for the money, though Lord knows we need it, but because walking away lets them win. You go in there with your head high, do brilliant work, and show that boy exactly what he lost. Elena looked at her aunt, this woman who'd raised her after her parents died, who'd worked 3 jobs to put food on the table, who'd never once let the world make her feel small. When did you get so wise? Elena asked. Been wise. You just don't always listen. Aunt June smiled. Now get dressed. We're going to church. You need some peace before you make any decisions. By Sunday evening, Elena had made her choice. She'd send the signed contract back to Patricia Chen with one condition. She would work directly with the project team, not with Ethan personally. If they agreed, she'd start Monday. Her phone buzzed with Patricia's response. Agreed. Welcome to the team. Elena closed her laptop and took a deep breath. She could do this. It was just business. Professional. Clean. She wouldn't let Ethan Caldwell get under her skin again. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Eleanor stood outside the Caldwell Realty building, a modern glass structure in downtown Charleston. She'd dressed carefully, a navy suit that made her feel powerful, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Professional armor. The lobby was all marble and chrome, expensive art on the walls, fresh flowers on the reception desk. Everything screamed money and taste. Eleanor Brooks for the Community Development Project, she told the receptionist. Of course, top floor. Mark Rivers is expecting you. Mark, that was good. She could work with Mark. He'd always been kind. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a bright office space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Beautiful. Intimidating. Elena! Mark walked toward her, smiling warmly. He looked the same. Sandy hair, friendly eyes, expensive but understated suit. It's good to see you, he said, shaking her hand. Really good. I'm glad you accepted. Thank you for having me. Elena kept her voice professional. Let me show you around. Mark led her through the office. Conference rooms here, break room there. Your office will be... My office? Elena interrupted. Well, yeah, you'll need a workspace. Don't worry, it's not huge, but it has a window. They turned a corner and Eleanor's heart stopped. Ethan stood by the coffee machine, mid-conversation with another employee. He looked tired. His shirt sleeves were rolled up and his tie was slightly loose. When he saw her, his face went pale. Eleanor, he breathed. Mr. Caldwell, she said coolly. The other employee looked between them, clearly sensing tension, and quickly excused himself. Mark cleared his throat. Ethan, I was just showing Eleanor to her office. You're working here. Ethan's voice came out strangled. For the next 4 weeks, Eleanor confirmed. Is that a problem? No, of course not. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know. That makes 2 of us, Eleanor said. Your company called me. I assumed you knew. It was my father's idea, Ethan admitted. Damage control after the wedding. Of course. Everything clicked into place. This wasn't about her skills. It was about making the Caldwell family look good. Well, I'm here to do a job, Eleanor said firmly. Nothing more. She walked past him, following Mark down the hallway. She could feel Ethan's eyes on her back, but she didn't turn around. Mark showed her to a small office with a desk, a computer, and, as promised, a window with a view of the harbor. This is perfect, Elena said, setting down her bag. Listen, Mark said quietly, closing the door. I know this is weird. Ethan didn't know his father was going to hire you. When he found out this morning, he looked like he might have a heart attack. Not my problem, Eleanor said. Fair enough. Mark leaned against the desk. For what it's worth, I think you being here is good. Maybe it'll force him to face what he did. I'm not here to teach him lessons, Elena said. I'm here to work. I know, and I respect that. Mark headed for the door. Team meeting at 10. I'll come get you. After he left, Elena sat at her desk and stared out the window. The harbor sparkled in the morning sun. Sailboats drifted across the water. It was beautiful. She could do this. 4 weeks. Just 4 weeks. Then she'd never have to see Ethan Caldwell again. The team meeting was awkward. Eleanor sat at the conference table with Mark, Ethan, and 3 other project team members. They were discussing the renovation of several historic homes in a low-income neighborhood, a community development project that would preserve the buildings while creating affordable housing. It was actually a good project. Elena found herself getting interested despite her discomfort. "We need to honor the original architecture," she said, studying the blueprints, "but make it feel fresh and livable. These homes have history. We should highlight that, not hide it." "Exactly," Mark agreed. "That's why we wanted you on this. You have an eye for preserving character while modernizing." Ethan had barely spoken during the meeting. He sat at the far end of the table, his eyes occasionally drifting to Elena before quickly looking away. "Eleanor, would you be able to visit the properties this week?" one of the architects asked. "Get a feel for what we're working with?" "Of course. Just send me the addresses." "I can take you," Ethan said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. I know the neighborhood well," he continued, his voice strained, "and I'm meeting with the community board on Thursday anyway, so—" "Mark can take me," Eleanor interrupted. "I'm sure you're busy." "Actually, I'm swamped this week," Mark said apologetically. "Project in North Charleston needs attention. Ethan's your best bet." Eleanor wanted to argue, but everyone was watching. Making a scene would only create more gossip. "Fine," she said. "Thursday works." The meeting ended. Eleanor gathered her papers and stood to leave, but Ethan called after her. "Eleanor, can we talk? Please." "We just did. In the meeting. You know what I mean." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "About what happened at the wedding." "There's nothing to discuss," Eleanor said. "You said what you said, it's done." "I was drunk and stupid." "You were honest," Eleanor corrected. "Alcohol doesn't create feelings. It just reveals them." Ethan flinched like she'd slapped him. "That's not fair." "Fair?" Eleanor's voice remained quiet but sharp. "You want to talk about fair? You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. You called me a black maid, like I was something you scraped off your shoe. And now I'm supposed to work with you like none of that matters. I know I can't fix it." "You're right, you can't." Eleanor walked to the door. "But I can be professional. I can do my job, collect my paycheck, and move on. That's all this is. Business." She left before he could respond. Back in her office, Elena closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. That had taken everything she had, every ounce of composure and control. Her phone buzzed. A text from Aunt June. "How's the first day?" Elena typed back, "Surviving. That's my girl, proud of you." Elena smiled despite everything. Aunt June always knew exactly what to say. The week crawled by. Elena threw herself into work, studying the project blueprints, researching historic preservation techniques, and creating mood boards for each property. The work was interesting, exactly the kind of challenge she loved. But the office gossip was relentless. People whispered when she walked by. Some were sympathetic. Others seemed to think she'd orchestrated the whole scandal for attention. Several times she caught employees quickly closing their phones when she approached, obviously reading about the viral video. By Wednesday, she'd had enough. "Can I help you?" she asked when she caught 2 women staring at her in the break room. They both jumped, looking guilty. "We were just—" one started. "Wondering about me and your boss?" Elena finished. "Let me save you the trouble. We dated 5 years ago. He ended it, I moved on, that's the whole story." "We didn't mean to be rude," the other woman said quickly. "Then maybe don't gossip about people while they're standing 10 feet away." Eleanor grabbed her coffee and left. Her hands shook as she walked back to her office. She hated this, hated being the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. That evening, her phone rang. Unknown number again. "Hello? Miss Brooks, this is Jennifer Taylor from Charleston today. We'd love to interview you about the Caldwell wedding incident. Get your side of the story." Eleanor hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number, another reporter. She turned off her phone and sat in the dark, exhausted. Thursday morning, Ethan knocked on her office door. "Ready to see the properties?" he asked. Elena grabbed her bag. "Let's go." They drove in uncomfortable silence. Ethan's car was expensive, some luxury brand she didn't recognize. Leather seats. Perfect climate control. It smelled new. "The first property is about 15 minutes away," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "It's the largest of the 3. Built in 1887, original hardwood floors, needs significant structural work, but the bones are solid." "Sounds good," Elena said, staring out the window. More silence. "Elena, please don't," she said quietly. "Let's just focus on work." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. They arrived at the first property, a beautiful old house with a sagging porch and peeling paint. But Elena could see the potential immediately. The architecture was stunning. High ceilings, original moldings, large windows that would let in gorgeous light. "This is incredible," she said, walking through the empty rooms. "You really think so?" Ethan followed her, his voice hopeful. "The craftsmanship is amazing. Look at this woodwork." Elena ran her hand along the intricate trim. "People don't build like this anymore." "That's what I thought too," Ethan said. "That's why I pushed for this project. These homes deserve to be preserved." Elena glanced at him. He looked genuine, passionate even. It reminded her of the Ethan she used to know, before the pressure and expectations had hardened him. "What made you want to do this project?" she asked. Ethan was quiet for a moment, standing in the dusty sunlight streaming through the windows. "Honestly, guilt." He met her eyes. "After my father gave me that lecture about social classes and staying in my lane, I started looking at how our company operates. We build luxury condos, high-end developments, everything for people who already have everything." "That's business," Elena said. "Yeah, but it's not enough. This neighborhood, these homes, they have stories. The people who live here have been pushed out by rising costs and developers who don't care about community." He gestured around the empty room. "I wanted to do something that actually mattered." Elena studied him carefully. "Is that why you didn't fight your father 5 years ago? Because you thought staying in your lane mattered more?" The question hung in the air between them. "I thought I was being realistic," Ethan said finally. "I thought I was protecting both of us from something that couldn't work." "You were being a coward," Elena said. Not angry, just factual. Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I was." They stood there in the empty house, dust motes dancing in the sunlight. Outside birds sang, traffic hummed in the distance. "I think about that phone call a lot," Ethan said quietly. "The one where I ended things. I can still hear your voice asking me why, and I didn't have a good answer then. I still don't." "You don't need to explain anymore," Elena said. "It's ancient history." "Is it?" Ethan's eyes searched hers. "Because standing here with you, it doesn't feel ancient. It feels like yesterday." Elena's breath caught. For a moment, just a moment, she felt it too. The connection they used to have. The ease, the understanding. Then her phone buzzed, breaking the spell. A text from Mark. "How's the site visit going?" "We should see the other properties," Elena said, stepping away, "before it gets dark." Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, let's go." They visited 2 more homes, both smaller but equally charming. Elena took notes, sketched ideas, and tried to ignore the tension that followed them like a shadow. When Ethan dropped her back at the office, he hesitated before she got out of the car. "Elena, I know you don't want to hear it, but I need to say this. I'm sorry for everything, for how I ended things back then, for what I said at the wedding, for not being brave enough to—" "Ethan, stop." Elena turned to face him. "Your apologies don't change anything. They don't fix the past. They don't make me trust you, they just make you feel better. That's not why—" "Isn't it?" Elena asked. "You want forgiveness so you can stop feeling guilty, but I don't owe you that. I don't owe you anything." She got out of the car before he could respond, but as she walked into the building, she felt tears burning behind her eyes, because he was right about one thing. It didn't feel like ancient history. It felt raw and fresh and painful. And she hated that he could still affect her like this. That night, Elena sat in Aunt June's small living room, eating leftover soup and trying to decompress. "So, how was the site visit?" Aunt June asked. "The properties are beautiful. The project is good." Elena paused, and Ethan apologized again. "What did you say?" "That his apologies don't fix anything." Aunt June nodded slowly. "That's true. They don't. But baby girl, you can't heal by pretending it didn't hurt." Elena looked up, surprised. "I'm not pretending—" "Yes, you are. You're walking around acting like you're fine, like seeing him doesn't affect you. But I know you, Elena Brooks. You're hurt, you're angry, and you're scared that if you let yourself feel it, you'll fall apart." The tears Elena had been holding back finally spilled over. "I hate that he still matters. I hate that I still care what he thinks." "Then let yourself hate it," Aunt June said gently. "Let yourself feel all of it. The anger and the hurt and the fear, because that's the only way through it." Elena cried into her aunt's shoulder like she hadn't let herself cry in years. All the pain she'd buried 5 years ago came rushing back. The humiliation at the wedding, the betrayal, the loneliness. "I thought I was over him," Elena whispered. "Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but either way, You can't keep running from it. Aunt June held her until the tears stopped, until Elena could breathe again. You know what you need? Aunt June said. You need to decide what you actually want. Not what you think you should want. Not what makes you look strong. What your heart actually wants. I don't know, Elena admitted. Then figure it out, because that boy isn't going anywhere for the next 3 weeks, and you can't keep building walls and expect to find peace. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the house they'd visited. The way Ethan's eyes had lit up when talking about the project. The sadness in his voice when he'd talked about the phone call. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A news alert. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. Caldwell wedding video. Hits 1 million views. Eleanor's stomach sank. She opened the article. The video had exploded overnight. Hundreds of thousands of shares. Think pieces about racism and privilege. Comments debating whether Ethan was truly racist or just thoughtless. And now people had found her name, her business, her social media accounts. Some of the comments were supportive. That woman deserves better. But others were cruel. She's milking this for attention. Elena turned off her phone and stared at the ceiling. 3 more weeks. She just had to survive 3 more weeks. Then she could put Ethan Caldwell and his world behind her forever. Or at least, that's what she kept telling herself. But deep down, in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, she wondered if 3 weeks would be enough, or if the damage was already done. If maybe, despite everything, despite all the hurt and anger and betrayal, maybe she'd never really let him go at all. Friday morning, Elena woke up to her phone exploding with notifications. She'd made the mistake of turning it back on. Now she regretted it. The video had gone completely viral. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the interview. Lydia Hart speaks out. I was blindsided by my fiancé's secret past. Elena's hands shook as she read the article. Lydia had given a full interview to Charleston Today, complete with professionally shot photos. She looked beautiful and wounded, the perfect victim. I had no idea about this woman from Ethan's past, Lydia was quoted saying. When she showed up at our wedding, I felt ambushed. The whole thing was humiliating. And now I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about the man I was supposed to marry. The article painted Elena as a troublemaker, someone who deliberately crashed the wedding to cause drama. The comments section was vicious. She obviously wanted revenge. Gold digger trying to ruin his life. Poor Lydia. She deserves better. Elena felt sick. This was spinning completely out of control. She called her boss, Stephen, who ran the consulting firm where she'd built her reputation. Elena, I saw the article, Stephen said, his voice tight. We need to talk. I didn't crash the wedding, Elena said quickly. You sent me there. It was a legitimate job. I know that. But perception matters in this business. 3 more clients have pulled out. They're worried about being associated with controversy. Elena's heart sank. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe you should take some time off. Let this blow over. You're firing me. Her voice came out small. I'm not firing you. I'm just suggesting a break. Come back when things settle down. And in the meantime, how do I pay my bills? Stephen was quiet. I'm sorry, Elena. I really am. But I have to think about the business. The call ended. Elena sat on her bed, staring at nothing. She'd worked so hard to build her career. Years of sacrifice and late nights and proving herself over and over. And now it was crumbling because of something she didn't even do. Aunt June knocked softly on her bedroom door. Baby girl, you okay? No, Elena whispered. I'm really not. Elena went to the office anyway. She had a contract with Caldwell Realty for 3 more weeks. That money was the only thing keeping her afloat now. But the moment she walked through the door, she knew everyone had seen the article. The whispers were louder, the stares more obvious. Someone had even left a printout of Lydia's interview on her desk. Elena crumpled it up and threw it away. Her jaw clenched. She made it through the morning by keeping her head down and focusing on work. The property renovation plans needed finalization. She could lose herself in that. Around noon, Mark appeared at her door, looking grim. Conference room now. Ethan's called an emergency meeting. Elena's stomach twisted. What about? The article. He's furious. In the conference room, Ethan paced like a caged animal. His tie was loose, his hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. When he saw Elena, his expression shifted to something like pain. There you are, he said. Sit down, please. Elena sat. The entire project team was there, along with Patricia Chen from HR and someone Elena didn't recognize, an older woman in an expensive suit. This is Rebecca Marsh, Ethan said, our PR consultant. We need to discuss how to handle this situation. Handle what situation? Elena asked carefully. The lies, Ethan said flatly. Everything in Lydia's interview is garbage. You didn't crash the wedding. You didn't ambush anyone. You were hired to do a job. Rebecca cleared her throat. Mr. Caldwell, I understand you're upset, but we need to be strategic here. Making a public statement could escalate things further. I don't care, Ethan said. Elena's reputation is being destroyed because of something I did. I'm not standing by while that happens. Elena's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. What exactly are you proposing? Rebecca asked. A press statement, an interview if necessary. Whatever it takes to set the record straight. Ethan looked directly at Elena. I should have done this days ago. Ethan, Elena said quietly, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. This is my fault. All of it. And I'm done hiding behind damage control and PR strategies. Mark leaned forward. He's right. The truth needs to come out. Patricia nodded. From a legal standpoint, we have documentation proving Elena was hired by Lydia's family. We can back up everything. Rebecca sighed. If we're doing this, we need to do it right. A written statement first. Carefully worded, professional, taking full responsibility without being defensive. Fine, Ethan agreed. Let's draft it now. The next 2 hours were intense. Rebecca typed while everyone contributed ideas. Elena mostly stayed quiet, still processing the fact that Ethan was willing to put himself in the crosshairs for her. Finally, they had a statement. Rebecca read it aloud. I want to address the recent events surrounding my wedding and clarify several misconceptions. Elena Brooks did not crash my wedding. She was hired as a professional consultant by my fiancé's family to assist with last-minute decor adjustments. She conducted herself with complete professionalism and grace. The hurtful comments I made were my own failure, a reflection of my own insecurities and past mistakes. Ms. Brooks has built an impressive career through hard work and talent. She deserves respect, not speculation or harassment. I take full responsibility for the pain I've caused, and I deeply regret that my words have led to her being unfairly targeted. I hope this statement helps set the record straight and allows everyone involved to move forward with dignity. Ethan Caldwell. The room was silent for a moment. It's good, Mark said finally. Honest without being dramatic. Elena? Ethan looked at her. Does this work for you? She read it again, her throat tight. It was more than she'd expected, more than she thought he'd be willing to say. It's good, she managed. Then let's release it, Ethan said. Rebecca sent the statement to several news outlets. Within an hour, it was live on social media and being picked up by local news sites. Elena watched the responses roll in from her office. The public reaction was mixed but shifting in her favor. Finally, some honesty. Good for him for owning up. She handled this with so much class. Her phone rang. Stephen, her boss. Elena, I saw Caldwell's statement. Listen, about what I said earlier. I'm on leave, remember? Elena said coolly. Per your suggestion. We could reconsider that. If you wanted to come back, I'll think about it, Elena said. Then she hung up. She felt a fierce satisfaction. Stephen had abandoned her when things got hard. She wouldn't forget that easily. Another knock on her door. Ethan stood there, looking exhausted but relieved. Can I come in? Elena nodded. He sat across from her desk, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Thank you, Elena said quietly, for the statement. You don't need to thank me. It was the bare minimum. Ethan ran a hand over his face. I should have done it days ago. I was just scared, Elena finished. Yeah, scared of making it worse. Scared of what my family would say. Scared of... He trailed off. Of what? Of admitting how badly I screwed up. 5 years ago and now. His voice was raw. Every time I see you, Elena, I'm reminded of every mistake I've made, every cowardly choice. Elena's chest tightened. Ethan, I know you don't want to hear this, but I need to say it anyway. He leaned forward. Breaking up with you was the biggest mistake of my life. Not because of timing or circumstances, but because I let fear make my choices. I let my father's voice in my head drown out everything else, including my own heart. Eleanor looked down at her hands. We can't change the past. I know, but maybe we can change what happens next. She met his eyes. What does that mean? It means I want to be better. Not just say it, but prove it. Ethan's voice was steady now. Starting with this project, these houses, this community, it matters, and I want to do it right with you. Elena studied him carefully. She saw sincerity in his eyes, but she'd seen that before. I need time, she said finally. to figure out if I can trust you again. I understand. Ethan stood. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. After he left, Elena sat in her office as afternoon faded to evening. Outside, dark clouds rolled in. Rain started pattering against the windows. She thought about what Aunt June had said, about letting herself feel everything instead of running from it. Maybe that's what she needed to do. Stop protecting herself so fiercely. Stop assuming the worst. Maybe Ethan really had changed, or maybe he was changing right now in front of her. The question was, did she have the courage to let him? The rain turned into a downpour by the time Elena left the office. She'd stayed late, working on staging plans for the properties. When she finally looked up, it was dark outside, and water pounded against the windows. She didn't have an umbrella, of course. Elena stood under the building's awning, watching the rain and debating whether to make a run for it. The parking garage was 2 blocks away. Need a ride? She turned to find Ethan standing there, car keys in hand. I'm fine, she said automatically. Eleanor, it's pouring. Let me drive you. I can walk, please? Something in his voice made her look at him. He looked vulnerable, hopeful. Let me do this one small thing. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. They ran to his car, getting soaked despite the short distance. Inside the car, they both laughed breathlessly, wiping water from their faces. So much for staying dry, Ethan said. Elena's hair had come loose from its bun. She tried to fix it, but it was hopeless. I look like a drowned cat. You look beautiful, Ethan said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Elena's heart beat faster. Where am I taking you? Ethan asked, starting the car. Home, I can give you the address. I remember where you live. Elena blinked in surprise. How? I drove past your apartment once, Ethan admitted. About a year after we broke up. I don't know why, I needed to know you were okay. That's kind of creepy, Elena said, but there was no bite in her voice. Yeah, it was. I sat in my car for 20 minutes feeling like an idiot, then drove away. Despite everything, Eleanor smiled. Did you at least see me? No, but I saw the flower boxes in your windows. I remembered you always wanted a garden. The fact that he remembered that detail, something so small, made Elena's chest ache. They drove in comfortable silence through the rain-soaked streets. The city lights blurred through the wet windows, creating a dreamlike atmosphere. Pull over there, Elena said suddenly, pointing to a small coffee shop. I need caffeine after that day. Ethan parked. They ran through the rain again, ducking under the shop's awning. Inside, the coffee shop was warm and cozy. Only a few other customers sat at scattered tables. Soft jazz played through the speakers. It smelled like espresso and cinnamon. My treat, Ethan said, approaching the counter. Eleanor ordered a latte. Ethan got black coffee. They found a corner table by the window, watching the rain stream down the glass. This place is nice, Ethan said. How'd you know about it? Aunt June and I come here sometimes after church on Sundays. Elena wrapped her hands around her warm cup. It's quiet, peaceful. How is your aunt? I always liked her. She's good, stubborn as ever. Elena smiled. She asks about you sometimes. Ethan looked surprised. She does? She says she's praying for your soul. Elena's smile widened at his expression. She thinks you have potential. You just need better guidance. She's not wrong. Ethan took a sip of his coffee. My guidance has been pretty terrible. They fell into easy conversation. Nothing heavy, just small talk about the coffee shop, the rain, funny things that had happened at work. For the first time in weeks, Elena felt herself relaxing around him. Remember that time we got caught in the rain at the botanical gardens? Ethan said suddenly. Elena laughed. Oh God, we were soaked, and you tried to cover us with that tiny newspaper. It worked for about 5 seconds. We looked ridiculous. We looked happy, Ethan said softly. The mood shifted. Elena looked at him across the small table, really looked at him. She saw the boy she'd fallen in love with 5 years ago, but also someone new, someone who'd been through pain and was trying to grow from it. Why did you really end things? Elena asked. The real reason, not the excuse you gave on the phone. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. My father called me into his office, said he'd heard I was serious about that cleaning girl. He told me I was embarrassing the family, that people were talking, that if I wanted to be taken seriously in business, I needed to be with someone from the right background. And you believed him. I believed that he might be right about the world being cruel, about us facing too many obstacles. Ethan's voice was tight with emotion, but mostly I was terrified of disappointing him, of being cut off from the family, of losing everything I'd worked for. So you chose safety over love, Elena said. Yes, and I regretted it every single day since. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Then why did you get engaged to Lydia? Why repeat the same pattern? Because I was still choosing safety, still trying to please my father, still being a coward. Ethan reached across the table but stopped short of touching her hand. Until I saw you walk into that garden. And everything I'd been running from caught up with me all at once. That must have been quite a shock, Elena said, a hint of humor in her voice. You have no idea. My heart literally stopped. They smiled at each other. Outside, the rain began to slow. I don't know if I can forgive you, Elena said honestly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did hurt me in ways I'm still working through. I know. But I think maybe... Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. Maybe I can try to let go of the anger. Try to see who you are now instead of who you were then. Hope flickered in Ethan's eyes. That's more than I deserve. Probably, Elena agreed. But Aunt June keeps telling me that holding on to anger only hurts me. So maybe this is for me, not for you. I'll take it. Ethan's voice was thick with emotion. And I'll spend every day proving I'm worth that chance. They finished their coffee in comfortable silence. When they got back to Ethan's car, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean and fresh. Ethan drove Elena home. When they pulled up to her apartment building, she hesitated before getting out. Thank you, she said, for the ride, and the coffee, and the conversation. Any time, Ethan said. Really? Any time. Elena got out of the car, but before closing the door, she leaned back in. Ethan, that statement you released? It was brave, and it mattered. His smile was soft. I'm trying to be braver. You make me want to be. Elena went inside, her heart feeling lighter than it had in weeks. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not forgetting the past, but deciding it didn't have to define the future. Over the next week, something shifted between Elena and Ethan. They worked closely on the renovation project, visiting the properties almost daily. Elena designed staging concepts while Ethan handled the construction logistics. They made a good team. More than that, they became friends again. Not like before. This was different, more careful, more honest. They took lunch breaks together, talked about books and music, shared stories about work. Slowly, piece by piece, they rebuilt something that felt almost like trust. The media attention died down. Lydia gave one more interview where she announced the wedding was officially called off, then disappeared from public view. The viral video became old news, replaced by newer scandals. Helena's business slowly recovered. A few clients came back. New ones reached out, impressed by how she'd handled the controversy with dignity. Everything was starting to feel normal again, until Ethan's father showed up. Elena was at the largest property, taking measurements for furniture placement, when she heard raised voices from outside. She looked through the window. A silver Mercedes had pulled up. An older man got out. Tall, grey-haired, expensive suit. He looked like an older version of Ethan, Mr. Caldwell. Elena's stomach tightened. She'd never officially met Ethan's father, but she recognized him from photos. This was the man who'd convinced Ethan to leave her 5 years ago. She watched as Mr. Caldwell approached Ethan, who was talking with contractors by the front porch. Even from a distance, she could see tension in Ethan's posture. Elena moved closer to the window, trying to hear. Embarrassing the family again, Mr. Caldwell's voice carried. First the wedding disaster, now this, you're working with that woman? Her name is Elena, Ethan said firmly, and she's the best consultant we could have asked for. Don't be naive. Everyone knows about your history. People are talking. Let them talk. Mr. Caldwell's face reddened. You threw away a perfectly good marriage because of this obsession. Lydia was exactly what you needed. Cultured, connected, from the right family. Lydia and I were wrong for each other. We both know that. You were wrong for each other because you never let go of that maid. Elena flinched at the word. Even after everything, it still stung. She was never a maid. Ethan's voice rose. She was a housekeeper who worked her way through college. She built a business from nothing. She has more integrity in her little finger than half the people at your country club. Watch your tone with me. No. Ethan stepped closer to his father. I'm done watching my tone. I'm done pretending my value comes from pleasing you. I'm done sacrificing the people I care about to maintain some image. Mr. Caldwell looked shocked. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm leaving the family business. I'm starting my own firm. Small developments, community projects, things that actually matter. Ethan's voice was steady now, clear. You can support that or not. But I'm done living by your rules. Eleanor's breath caught. He was really doing it, really choosing differently. You're throwing your future away, Mr. Caldwell said coldly, on a maid. I'm building my future, and if Eleanor will let me, I'd like her to be part of it. Ethan's voice softened, not because of what she does or where she comes from, but because she's the best person I know, and I was an idiot to ever let her go. Silence stretched between father and son. Then Mr. Caldwell turned and walked back to his car without another word. The Mercedes pulled away, leaving Ethan standing alone in the yard. Elena's hands trembled. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but now she'd heard everything. She stepped away from the window, her mind spinning. Ethan had just walked away from his family business. For this project, for his own path, for her. No, not for her, for himself, but still. The door opened. Ethan walked in, looking shaken. When he saw Elena, he froze. "How much did you hear?" he asked quietly. "Enough," Elena admitted. They stood there, the empty house echoing around them. "I meant what I said," Ethan told her. "Every word. Ethan, you can't just blow up your life." "I'm not blowing it up. I'm finally building it the way I should have from the start." He crossed the room to stand in front of her. "I'm not doing this for you, Elena. I'm doing it for me. Because I can't be the person I want to be while living someone else's version of my life." Eleanor searched his face. "What if it doesn't work? What if you regret it?" "Then I regret it. But at least I'll regret trying instead of never trying at all." She understood that. God, did she understand that? "Your father called me a maid," she said quietly. "Just like you did at the wedding." Ethan's face crumpled with shame. "Eleanor, but unlike you, he meant it as an insult. You were just scared and stupid." She took a breath. "I think that's the difference. You've grown. He hasn't." "Does that mean—" Ethan's voice was hopeful. "Does that mean you believe me? About wanting to change?" Eleanor looked around the empty house, this beautiful broken house that they were working together to restore, making it whole again, making it matter again. Maybe people could be restored too, made whole, given second chances. "I believe you're trying," Elena said carefully. "And I think I'm ready to try too." "Try what?" "Try trusting you again." Slowly, carefully, she met his eyes. No promises, no guarantees, just trying. The smile that spread across Ethan's face was pure joy. "That's all I'm asking for." He reached out tentatively. Elena took his hand. His palm was warm against hers. They stood like that, holding hands in the empty house, while afternoon light streamed through the dusty windows. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture. It wasn't a declaration of love. It was just two people choosing to be brave enough to hope, and sometimes that was enough. The next morning, Eleanor woke up with her hand still tingling where Ethan had held it. She sat up in bed, confused by her own feelings. Yesterday had been intense. Watching Ethan stand up to his father, hearing him defend her, feeling that spark of connection when their hands touched. It scared her, because wanting something again meant risking everything again. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Good morning? Coffee before work?" Elena stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Maybe later. Need some time to think." She needed to talk to Aunt June. Aunt June was in her garden when Elena arrived, pruning rose bushes in the early morning sun. She looked up when Elena's car pulled into the driveway and immediately set down her shears. "Baby girl, what's wrong?" "Everything. Nothing. I don't know." Elena followed her aunt to the small porch, where they sat on the old wooden swing. "Tell me," Aunt June said gently. Elena told her everything, about Ethan's father showing up, about the things Ethan said, about holding his hand in that empty house, and feeling like maybe, just maybe, they could try again. "And now I'm terrified," Elena finished, "because what if I'm making the same mistake? What if he hurts me again?" Aunt June was quiet for a moment, watching a butterfly dance through her flowers. "You know what I've learned in my 56 years?" she finally said. "Fear keeps you safe, but it also keeps you small. And you weren't made to live small, Eleanor. I don't want to be stupid. Trusting someone isn't stupid. It's brave." Aunt June took Elena's hand. "That boy hurt you, badly, and you have every right to protect yourself. But I've seen the way you talk about him these past few weeks, the way your eyes light up when you mention the project you're working on together. That doesn't mean... It means you're already letting him back in, whether you admit it or not." Aunt June squeezed her hand. "So the question isn't whether you should take a risk. You're already taking it. The question is whether you're going to let fear stop you from seeing where it goes." Elena felt tears well up. What if it doesn't work? Then it doesn't work. And you'll heal again like you did before, but what if it does work? What if you miss out on something beautiful because you were too scared to try? Eleanor leaned against her aunt's shoulder. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just finally listening. Aunt June kissed the top of her head. Now go. Figure out what your heart wants, not what your fear wants. Eleanor went back to work with Aunt June's words echoing in her mind. The office felt different now. The gossip had died down. People treated her with respect. Some even seemed impressed by how she'd handled everything. She worked through the morning, finalizing staging plans for the 3 properties. The designs were coming together beautifully. She felt proud of this project. It mattered. Around noon, Mark knocked on her door. Got a minute? He asked. Sure. Come in. Mark sat across from her desk, looking serious. I wanted to give you a heads up. Ethan's planning something big. He's having lunch with his parents today, at the Charleston Club. Elena's stomach tightened. Why are you telling me? Because I think he's going to make a public break with his father, and I thought you should know. Mark paused. He's doing this for himself, but also for you, and I wanted you to understand what that means. What does it mean? It means he's choosing you over everything his father represents. Money, status, the family legacy. Mark's expression was gentle. That's not something Ethan takes lightly. After Mark left, Eleanor couldn't focus on work. She kept checking the time. The lunch would be happening right now. What was Ethan saying? How were his parents reacting? Around 2 o'clock, her phone rang. Ethan. She answered. Hello? It's done. His voice sounded shaky but relieved. I told them, in front of half of Charleston's social elite, that I'm leaving the company, starting my own firm, living my own life. How did they react? My father stormed out. My mother looked like I'd slapped her. But you know what? I don't care. For the first time in my life, I don't care what they think. Elena's chest tightened with emotion. Ethan, I need to see you, he said quickly. Can I come by later, after work? I'm at Aunt June's. Come here. Ethan arrived at Aunt June's house just before sunset. He looked exhausted, but somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Aunt June answered the door, looked him up and down and said, Well, you look like you've been through it. Yes, ma'am, I have. Elena's in the garden, fixing that broken gate you helped with last time. Aunt June's eyes softened slightly. You did good today, son. Standing up for yourself. Thank you, Ethan said quietly. He found Elena in the backyard, working on the old wooden gate that led to the vegetable garden. She wore jeans and an old t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked beautiful. Need help? He asked. Elena looked up, smiled. Actually, yes. Can you hold this while I tighten the hinge? They worked together in comfortable silence. The sun painted everything golden. Birds sang in the nearby trees. It felt peaceful. Right. When the gate was fixed, they sat on the grass watching the sunset. I'm scared, Elena said suddenly. Of what? Of this. Of us. Of getting hurt again. She pulled at the grass between her fingers. But I'm also scared of letting fear make my choices. Like you did 5 years ago. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand, and I don't blame you for being scared. I'm scared too. You are. Terrified. What if I mess this up again? What if I'm not good enough? What if... Stop, Elena interrupted gently. She turned to face him. We can't live in the what-ifs. We can only deal with what is. And what is? Ethan's voice was soft, hopeful. Elena took a deep breath. What is that I believe you've changed. I believe you're trying to be better, and I believe that maybe we deserve a second chance, not to recreate what we had, but to build something new, something stronger. Ethan's eyes glistened with emotion. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Elena agreed, a small smile playing at her lips. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that we both deserve to be happy, and maybe we can find that together. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded it. What's that? Eleanor asked. Do you remember the first note I ever wrote you? When we first met? Eleanor's breath caught. She did remember. 5 years ago, Ethan had left a note on her car after she'd cleaned his apartment. It had said something silly about her forgetting her water bottle, but it made her smile. I kept it, Ethan said quietly, and I wrote a new one, to replace it. He handed her the paper. Eleanor read it, tears blurring her vision. Eleanor, 5 years ago, I wrote you a note because I didn't know how else to talk to you. Today I'm writing another one because there aren't enough spoken words to say what I need to say. I'm sorry. For being a coward, for choosing fear over love, for wasting 5 years we could have spent together. But I'm also grateful, because those 5 years taught me what matters. They taught me who I want to be. They taught me that running from something real is the biggest mistake I could make. I don't know if we can fix what broke, but I'd like to try. Not to go back, but to move forward. Together, if you'll let me. Eleanor folded the note carefully, holding it against her chest. This is really corny, you know. Ethan laughed, wiping his eyes. I know, but it's honest. Yeah, Eleanor whispered. It is. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and gentle and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Ethan was smiling through tears. Does this mean? It means I forgive you, Eleanor said. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let go of the anger. I deserve to be happy, we both do. They sat in Aunt June's garden as the sun set, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing, about the past and the future, about hopes and fears. Inside the house, Aunt June watched through the window, smiling to herself. She whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. Sometimes love needed time to grow roots, and these two, they were finally ready to grow. The next few weeks passed in a blur of gentle rebuilding. Ethan and Elena took things slowly, carefully. They had coffee dates and long walks. They worked on the renovation project together, their professional chemistry translating into personal connection. But they didn't rush. They'd learned that lesson already. One evening, Ethan called her with news. My mother wants to meet you properly. Eleanor's stomach clenched. Really? She called me today, said she'd like to have tea, just the three of us. Ethan paused. You don't have to if you're not ready. Eleanor thought about it. Mrs. Caldwell had always been part of the problem, part of the pressure that pushed Ethan away. But maybe she was part of the solution too. Okay, Elena said. When? Saturday afternoon, Eleanor stood outside the Caldwell mansion, her heart pounding. The house was exactly as intimidating as she remembered. Old money, old traditions, old prejudices. Ethan met her at the door, squeezing her hand. You've got this, and I'm right here. Mrs. Caldwell waited in the sunroom, a beautiful space with large windows overlooking manicured gardens. She wore a pale blue dress and pearls. Everything about her screamed elegance. Miss Brooks, she said, standing. Thank you for coming. Mrs. Caldwell. Eleanor shook her hand, keeping her spine straight. She would not be intimidated. They sat. Tea was already prepared. Delicate china cups, tiny sandwiches, proper etiquette. Mrs. Caldwell poured the tea herself, which surprised Eleanor. She'd expected a servant to do it. I wanted to speak with you, Mrs. Caldwell began, because I owe you an apology. Eleanor blinked. She had not expected that. 5 years ago, when Ethan told us about you, I did not react well. Mrs. Caldwell's voice was measured, but Elena detected genuine emotion beneath it. I let my concerns about social standing cloud my judgment. I didn't see you as a person. I saw you as a threat to our family's image. And now? Elena asked quietly. Now I see what my son sees. Someone strong, talented, dignified. Mrs. Caldwell met Elena's eyes. Someone who makes him better, happier, more himself. Ethan reached under the table and took Elena's hand. After the wedding disaster, Mrs. Caldwell continued, I watched how you handled everything. With grace, without seeking revenge or attention, you simply continued building your life. She paused. That takes character, real character. Thank you, Elena said, unsure what else to say. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Mrs. Caldwell said. I don't deserve that, but I am asking that you not judge Ethan by his parents' failures. He's trying to be better than we were. Eleanor looked at Ethan, saw the hope in his eyes. I know he is, Eleanor said. That's why I'm here. The tea lasted another hour. They talked about the renovation project, about Eleanor's business, about neutral topics that slowly became more comfortable. As Elena prepared to leave, Mrs. Caldwell walked her to the door. One more thing, she said quietly so Ethan couldn't hear. Don't waste this chance. My son has loved you for 5 years. Even when he was with someone else, even when he tried to move on, he's always loved you. Elena's throat tightened. How do you know? Because I'm his mother. I know when he's pretending. Mrs. Caldwell's expression softened. He stopped pretending the day you walked into that wedding. 2 weeks later, the first renovated property was finished. Eleanor and Ethan stood on the freshly painted porch, looking at the transformation. The old house gleamed with new life. Original features had been preserved and highlighted. Modern updates made it functional and comfortable. It's perfect, Elena breathed. You did this, Ethan said. Your vision brought it to life. We did this. Together. Mark pulled up in his car, getting out with a champagne bottle. Thought we should celebrate. They popped the cork right there on the porch, toasting to the house and the project and new beginnings. I have news, Ethan said as they drank. I filed the paperwork. Caldwell Community Development is officially registered. Your own company, Elena said, squeezing his hand. How does it feel? Terrifying. Exciting. Right. Ethan looked at her. And I was hoping you might consider coming on as a partner, not just a consultant, an actual partner. Elena's heart raced. Ethan, that's a big decision, I know. You don't have to answer now, but I want to build this with you. Not just houses, but something that matters, something we can be proud of. Elena looked at the house they'd restored together, thought about the community this project would serve, the families who would live here, the legacy they could build. Yes, she said, I want that too. They kissed on the porch of that beautiful old house, while Mark cheered and champagne bubbles tickled their noses. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges ahead, still wounds that needed healing, still conversations that would be hard, but they were facing it together. And that made all the difference. 6 months passed. The renovation project was a huge success. All 3 houses were completed and filled with families. The neighborhood celebrated with a block party, and Elena and Ethan were treated like heroes. Caldwell Community Development grew slowly but steadily. They took on 2 more projects. Elena's staging and design work became sought after. Her old boss, Stephen, called several times asking her to come back. She politely declined each time. She and Ethan grew closer. Their relationship deepened with time and trust. They'd learned to communicate better, to be honest about fears and needs, to not let small issues become big problems. Aunt June loved having them both around. She'd joke that she finally had someone to help with the heavy yard work. One Sunday afternoon, Elena and Ethan were at Aunt June's house, helping repair a fence panel that had rotted. It was hot work under the Charleston sun. I need water, Elena said, wiping sweat from her forehead. I'll get it. Ethan headed inside. But he didn't come back right away. Elena found him in the garden, kneeling beside Aunt June's rose bushes. When he saw her, he stayed on his knees. Her heart started pounding. What are you doing? She asked. Something I should have done a long time ago. Ethan pulled out a small box. But this time I'm doing it right. Eleanor's breath caught. Ethan, no fancy speeches, no big audience, just us and the people who matter. He opened the box to reveal a simple, beautiful ring. Elena Brooks, you've given me more grace than I ever deserved. You've shown me what real strength looks like, and you've made me want to be the kind of man who deserves you. Tears streamed down Elena's face. I love you, Ethan continued, his voice thick with emotion. I've loved you for 5 years, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that love to you every single day. Will you marry me? Through the kitchen window, Aunt June watched, her hand over her mouth. Elena looked at Ethan. This man who'd hurt her learned from it and grown into someone better, someone honest, someone brave enough to fight for what mattered. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Ethan stood and kissed her, the ring forgotten for a moment as they held each other in the garden. When they finally pulled apart, he slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. Aunt June came outside, crying happy tears. About time, she said, pulling them both into a hug. They celebrated with sweet tea and Aunt June's famous pecan pie. Mark came over when he heard the news, bringing flowers and more champagne. It was simple, intimate, perfect. That night, as Ethan drove Eleanor home, she kept looking at the ring on her finger. Having second thoughts? Ethan teased gently. Never, Elena said, just thinking about how far we've come. We've got a lot further to go. I know, and I can't wait. They planned a small wedding. Nothing like the disaster from before. Just close friends and family in Aunt June's garden. But first, Ethan had one more person to face. He invited his father to lunch. Mr. Caldwell agreed, though he sounded cold on the phone. They met at a quiet restaurant. Mr. Caldwell looked older, tired. The scandal and Ethan's departure had taken a toll. Thank you for coming, Ethan said. What do you want, Ethan? To tell you I'm getting married. To Elena. His father's jaw tightened. I see. And I want you to know that I'm happy. Happier than I've been in years. My business is growing, I'm doing work that matters, and I'm with someone who makes me better. You threw away your inheritance for her. I didn't throw anything away. I chose a different path. Ethan leaned forward. And I'd like you to be part of my life. Not because I need your approval, but because you're my father, and I love you. Mr. Caldwell was silent for a long time. I don't understand your choices. You don't have to. But I'd like you to respect them. And if I can't? Ethan's heart ached, but his voice stayed steady. Then I'll miss you, but I won't change my mind. His father stood to leave, but at the door, he turned back. Your mother says this girl, Eleanor, she's remarkable. She is. I suppose I should meet her properly, before the wedding. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. I'd like that, Ethan said. 1 year after the disastrous first wedding, Eleanor and Ethan stood in Aunt June's garden again. But this time everything was different. The guest list was small. Aunt June, Mark, Mrs. Caldwell, and a few close friends. Mr. Caldwell had declined, but he'd sent a gift. Antique cufflinks that had belonged to Ethan's grandfather. It was progress. Eleanor wore a simple ivory dress that made her feel like herself. No pretense, no performance, just her. Ethan wore a grey suit, his eyes never leaving Elena as she walked toward him. Aunt June officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this day. Her voice was strong and clear as she spoke about love and second chances. These two people have been through fire, Aunt June said. They faced pain and pride and everything that tries to tear love apart. But they chose each other anyway. They chose to fight for something real. Eleanor and Ethan exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Simple promises about honesty and growth and facing life together. When Ethan slipped the ring on Elena's finger, he whispered, "You never looked like a maid, Elena. You always looked like my future." Eleanor smiled through tears. "And you never looked like a coward. You just needed time to find your courage." They kissed as husband and wife, while their small circle of loved ones cheered. The reception was held right there in the garden. Aunt June's famous fried chicken and peach cobbler, Mark's terrible but heartfelt toast, Mrs. Caldwell surprising everyone by hugging Elena and whispering, "Welcome to the family," the good parts of it anyway. As the sun set, Elena and Ethan danced on the grass, no music except what they hummed to each other. "Happy?" Ethan asked. "So happy," Elena breathed. "Are you?" "Happier than I knew was possible." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for becoming someone worthy of it." They swayed together as twilight painted the sky purple and pink. Fireflies began to blink in the growing darkness. Aunt June's roses perfumed the air. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real. Two imperfect people who'd hurt each other learned from it and chose to build something beautiful from the ruins. And as the stars came out above them, Elena and Ethan held each other close, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. Not because everything was perfect, but because they'd learned that real love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, every single day, through mistakes and growth and all the messy, beautiful work of becoming better, together. 2 years later, Eleanor stood in front of a newly renovated Victorian house in North Charleston. The sold sign out front made her smile. Caldwell Community Development had just completed its 10th project. 10 houses restored, 10 neighborhoods strengthened, dozens of families given beautiful, affordable homes. Her phone rang. "Ethan." "Hey, where are you?" "Aunt June's waiting for us for Sunday dinner." "Just admiring number 10, Elena said. "We did good work here. We always do." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Come on. I think Aunt June made that peach cobbler you love." Elena drove to her aunt's house, the same house where she'd cried over heartbreak, found courage, and eventually found love again. Inside, Ethan was already helping set the table. Aunt June bustled around the kitchen, humming. Mark had been invited too, along with his new girlfriend. They ate together, this makeshift family built from love and choice and second chances. After dinner, as Elena helped wash dishes, Aunt June nudged her gently. "You look happy, baby girl." "I am," Elena said. "Really, truly happy. That's all I ever wanted for you." Aunt June kissed her cheek. "You took the hard road, the brave road, and look where it led you." Eleanor looked through the window to where Ethan was teaching Mark's girlfriend about roses, his hands gentle with the plants, his laugh warm and genuine. She thought about that first wedding, the humiliation, the viral video, the pain that had seemed unbearable, and she thought about everything that came after, the healing, the growth, the slow, careful rebuilding of trust. She wouldn't change any of it, because every hard moment had led her here, to this life, this love, this future. Outside, Ethan caught her watching and blew her a kiss. Elena smiled, touched her wedding ring, and felt nothing but gratitude for second chances, for forgiveness, for the courage to hope, and for love that was real enough to survive its own mistakes. Love that didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be true.